Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 10 shows that should have only had one season. In this video I will count down 10 shows that I believe should have only had one season, that would have been better had it just been one season long instead of kept going. I will rank these 10 shows from the ones that I believe least strongly to the one I believe most strongly should have just had one season. And this could be for various reasons. The show got worse, the story was already told in one season, or perhaps the story could have been condensed into one season and told better rather than stretched over several seasons. So, let's just go ahead and jump in to my top 10. I think this category is pretty self-explanatory. So we'll start with my number 10, which is Prison Break. Now, Prison Break is at my number 10 because I actually think this should have had two seasons. So it doesn't actually fit the category of this top 10. But to be honest, I could only think of 9 shows, and I was having a really, really hard time coming up with a 10th show. And so I finally decided to add Prison Break because even though it doesn't actually fit the title of the video, because I don't think it should have just had one season. I actually think it should have had 2 seasons, but still it had 4 seasons, and I think it should have ended after season 2. So I think it does earn a spot on the list, even though technically it doesn't deserve to be here, because it definitely should have ended sooner than what it did. Because I have heard the opinion before that Prison Break should have just had one season, because season 1 is about, the show's called Prison Break, and season 1 is about them breaking out of prison. At the end of season 1, guess what they do? They break out of prison. So a lot of people think that the show kept dragging on, which I disagree, because I actually prefer season 2 to season 1, because season 2 was actually about them on the run and the marshals trying to round them up, and there was various characters who would get rounded up and they would follow the different characters. So I actually liked season 2 better, much better than season 1, to be honest. But season 3 just repeated season 1, because he got put back into prison and they had to break out of another prison, and a bigger, more tougher prison. And then season 4 just repeated the events of season 2, because they were out on the run again. But it added a lot of convolution about like conspiracies and doing jobs to take down this conspiracy, and then having double crossing and all this stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I didn't hate season 4. I certainly liked it better than season 3, which was awful. But I think both those seasons were unnecessary. And especially, don't even get me started on the freaking TV movie that doesn't exist to me. And they actually did a revival of Prison Break, and to be honest, I didn't bother watching it, because I'm sure they would just be repeating the same premise over again. So really, this should have just had 2 seasons. Or maybe, if I wanted to get it to fit the category of this video, condense those 2 seasons into one season. But really, I think season 2 is beautiful, so I would say 2 seasons for this. Anyway, let me get to my number 9, which are actually shows that I think should have only had one season. And this is a tough one, and I know I'm going to get a lot of disagreement on this one, but I'm going to say my number 9 is The Boys. Now, hear me out, because I love The Boys. I think it's a great show. But for me, this is one of those shows where I think could have been condensed into one season, rather than it should have ended after where season 1 actually ends, because to me that's an incomplete story. But I think where season 2 ends, that is pretty much a complete story. And honestly, I think they could have condensed season 1 and 2 into one season, because I think parts of season 2 drag out or are unnecessary. And I have, of course, at the point of me recording this video, season 3 has yet to be released, but it's really hard for me to see where the story can go from here. It feels like they would just be stretching things out. And I think this is a problem with shows that are based off of comic books, particularly it reminds me a lot of The Walking Dead, is that comic books are a different medium that are designed to just go on and on and on and on and on and on forever, where I feel like shows, especially serialized shows like this, need to be more more confined. They need to be more finite. They need to have a beginning, middle, and end. And of course, that's my major problem with The Walking Dead and why I gave up on that show. And I get that same feeling for The Boys, because I actually think season 2 was a good ending, and so they could have just condensed these two into one season. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but a lot of people are going to disagree with my number 8 as well. So let me get into my number 8, which is Squid Games. Now, we haven't even gotten season 2 yet. Season 1 just aired. But my issue is this, as I think, because season 1 ended on a sort of cliffhanger note, setting up for season 2, which I think it shouldn't have. I think it should have ended with a finite ending, where, spoilers for Squid Game, kinda, where the guy should have just gotten on the plane and visited his daughter, because that would have been the happy ending, and it would still had that eerie element to it, but to me it would be a good finite ending. But no, he had to get off the plane because they need a season 2. Now again, I haven't seen season 2 yet, so maybe I'll eat my words once season 2 is released and think, oh wow, season 2 is even better than season 1. How dare I think there'll only be one season. But just from watching season 1, I think they should have ended it. It should have been a finite story. But anyway, again, I know everyone's going to disagree with me. I'll get to my number 7, which is Hannah. Now, I love Hannah. I love season 1, and I love season 2. Season 3 was fine. I liked parts of it, but it did seem kind of not the best way to end the show. And so really, even though as much as I do like season 2, I do feel like if they ended on season 1, it would have been more perfect. I don't know. I guess I kind of had mixed feelings about this, which is why it's only at number 7. But I definitely feel maybe they could have condensed 1 and 2 into one season. But because I definitely feel season 1 was the strongest season. You know, it's funny because I heard the opinion of some people not liking season 1 very much and saying that the movie was better because season 1 basically follows the events of the movie. And the movie sucked. I'm sorry, I hated the movie. It made me hesitant to even watch the show, but the show is like so superior. And it does such a better job of making you feel for the characters and fleshing out the characters. But then, yeah, it does kind of meander a bit. It's particularly season 3, and they try to recapture some of the emotions that season 1 and 2 had, and they fail. So, yeah, I do think this would have been better as one season. So next, we'll get into my number 6. Invincible, which is another, this is a case that's kind of similar to both Squid Game and The Boys, and so I now have a whole bunch of people disagree with me. First of all, I think the show is completely overrated. It is not as great as everyone else was making it out to be. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, again, similar to The Boys, this is another thing where I felt like they should have, or no, actually I should say similar to Squid Games. It was another thing where I felt like when season 1 ended, I didn't like the fact that they kept it open and ended. I didn't like the fact that they were setting up for future seasons. I wish they would have just resolved the situation right there, and it would have been a really nice... Actually, I wouldn't say that the season was so overrated. I would actually have a much higher opinion of it had they just ended it right here and had a good finite story. I don't want to see more seasons of this. And again, this harpens back to the problem with it being based off a comic book like The Boys and The Walking Dead. This is like comic books are meant to go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, which it would work better as a finite story, in my opinion. Now, it's also similar to Squid Game in the fact that I haven't seen season 2 yet. So again, I might end up eating my words, but at this point, I don't even want to watch season 2. I don't think there should be one. That's just me. Anyway, let me get into my number 5, which is The End of the Fucking World. Now, it is weird to have this on my list because when season 1 aired, I was like, please, please, please make a season 2, where these other people were like, no, don't make a season 2. This is a self-contained season. You don't need more than this. But I thought there could be more, and I got more, and I saw that the other people were right. Now, here's the thing. I didn't like the way that season 1 ended, which is why I wanted more. So I think if they nix the ending a bit, and make it a bit less dramatic, and make it more of like, dare I say, a happy ending, then I think you could have ended it right there. But season 2, problem with season 2, yeah, they did fix that ending, which I was happy about. But the problem with it is they kept, they're repeating the beats, because season 1 was about these two effed up characters. Or I say effed up when I say end of the fucking world. Two fucked up characters who end up forming an unlikely bond, and that's what the strength of the show. And then in season 2, they just immediately split them up, and for most of the season they were like hating each other until they finally got the better at the end, which is just repeating the same beat, because you saw them bond, and the bond that was done so well, and the bond was done so good, so strong, that to tear them apart for most of the season just to put them back together at the end seems kind of repetitive and a waste of time. So that should have just had one season. Just fix the ending a bit. Anyway, number 4, Stranger Things. Now, I have heard this opinion a lot. I'm not the only one who said this. I actually kind of preferred season 2 to season 1, but still, it is a self-contained story. In fact, the showrunners tried to kind of get around this by saying, oh, this isn't like a TV show with seasons. This is like a movie with sequels. Like, this is Stranger Things. That's why they call it Stranger Things 2 instead of Stranger Things Season 2, because they want you to think of like it's an 80s movie and this is a sequel. And just like a lot of other 80s horror-esque movies, maybe they shouldn't have had sequels, and the more the sequels they have, the more it loses and the more it sucks. Which I am very much not looking forward to season 4. I've completely lost interest in the show. Season 3 was mediocre at best, but at the end of season 3, it became evident to me that they are just repeating the same beats over and over and over again, and they have lost all originality, and they need to stop. Frankly, I think they should have just stopped after season 1. Honestly. Then we'll get into my number 3, which is Orange is the New Black. Now, I was never a huge fan of this show. But the more it went on, the less interested I became in it. It seemed to lose its purpose, its drive, and it seemed to just meander a bit. And I actually gave up on the show before it ended. I don't think I watched the last 2 seasons of it because I just had enough of it. Season 1 was a really strong season, though. It was based off a book. It followed the character of Piper, and we got through her. Saw prison through her eyes, but then future seasons Piper kind of just became a periphery side character, and they focused more on all these other characters, turning it into an ensemble show. And as much as I do love ensemble shows, I love ensemble shows when they work. This one didn't. And I always compare this to Lost, in terms of Lost had like the best use of flashbacks. Their flashbacks were like integrated into the theme of the episode, and they were very powerful, very meaningful, where the flashbacks in this show, and this tried to follow a similar format to Lost, where each episode had focused on a different character, and it followed their flashbacks, and you get their flashbacks sprinkled throughout the episode. But the difference is these flashbacks were boring and a complete waste of time and added nothing to the episode. And this is a problem that because they started doing this in season 2 mostly. Like season 1 mostly just followed Piper, and her flashbacks actually were meaningful. They did add story to the flavor, but once you got into future seasons, you start to get every character their own flashback episode. It was trying to do what Lost did, but failing. So it should have ended after one season. Then we'll get into my number 2 show that should have ended after one season, and that is Heroes. This is a huge one. A lot of people point to because all the other seasons of Heroes sucked. Now again, Heroes ended in such a way that was open-ended, but it shouldn't have. It should have had a finite, strong ending. And season 1 of Heroes was an amazing season. It was so well crafted. It had all these different characters with different powers, and it followed the character stories. You were really involved with these characters, and it worked as a finite story. But it did not have longevity. When they tried to stretch it out into future seasons, it just did not work, because they were just trying to redo what they did in the first season. So it was just repetitive. And I did actually watch the sequel series they had for this, Heroes Reborn, which, to be fair, wasn't as bad as like season 2 or 3 of Heroes, but still not great. It's still unnecessary. You still don't need it. All you needed was that one season of Heroes, because then they tried to bring the villain back to life and make him a main character, and it was just ridiculous. It did not work. And there were other characters that worked really well in season 1, such as Hero and Peter, whose powers were too strong that they had to take their powers away from them in future seasons in order to create tension, because they could resolve every situation, which wasn't an issue in season 1. So yeah, and it did just lost the plot in the future seasons. So even though season 4 was a good effort, good A for effort, good try, but nowhere near as bad as season 2 and 3, it's still unnecessary. All you needed is one season for Heroes. And now we will get into my number 1 show that should have had only one season, and this is a show I feel most strongly about. In fact, it was watching this show that inspired me to make this video, because I think there is no stronger case of a show that really should have ended after season 1, and that is 13 Reasons Why. And if you've watched any of the videos I've done on my channel on 13 Reasons Why, you've heard me say this before, because I say it over and over again, because I feel so strongly about that this should have ended after one season, because I actually love season 1 of 13 Reasons Why. I think it's one of the best seasons of television ever. I was just rewatching one of the episodes in particular, which I think is a masterpiece, and it brings me to tears. Like, no episode emotionally affects me more than that one. Like, I relate to it so much. I'm talking about the episode where Clay listens to his tape, because 13 Reasons Why is the premise where Hannah committed suicide, and she made these 13 tapes, each addressed to a different person, which is the reason that made her, people that basically bullied her and treated her poorly, that made her want to commit suicide and made her feel worthless. And so each episode followed a different tape. So it was a finite idea, and it actually worked in that terms. Of that finite idea. And also you followed the show through the protagonist Clay, and seeing his sort of the relationship he had with Hannah, and the regrets he had over her death, and how and this is the thing, I think some people say promote suicide. I think those people are objectively wrong. That it actually, the point of the show was to illustrate how we should see, be more careful about bullying people, treating people like shit, because you never know what they're suffering through. And once you do find out, it's too late, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it really, as particularly following the character of Clay, it really lived in those regrets, and that's why we relate to it so much, because it really delved into what it's like to regret something, but not be able to change it at all, just have to live with it and move forward. And that made it very powerful. Then you get seasons 2, 3, and 4, which are total garbage. Where season 2 tried to stretch out the story with Hannah, which did not work. It ended up retconning some things, like adding in a romance that Hannah had, which absolutely does not fit with what was established in season 1. And in fact, it detracts from the connection that Clay and Hannah had, which was the whole heart and the whole point of the show. And then seasons 3 and 4 turned into a stupid murder mystery, and they add all this stupid, try to make commentary on other high school stuff like gun violence and shit, where it's just things tacked on. Doesn't make any sense. By the season 4, the character of Clay is completely different, and you don't give a flying rat's ass about any of these characters, because none of the connections and none of the ways they've been established in season 1 maintain or make sense or hold. And so it was an absolute travesty that this show got future seasons. This was a bigger cash grab than Stranger Things, because the thing with 13 Reasons Why and Stranger Things, they're both Netflix shows that the first season was a hit. It was a huge success. It was made so much money. Everyone was talking about it, got all the buzz. And so that's why they gave it future seasons. Now, Stranger Things, at least, like, even though the future seasons were just repetitive, that it didn't really, at least they maintained a level of quality. It didn't completely shit all over the characters like 13 Reasons Why did. So that's why this is an even bigger cash grab, is because it should not have had any more seasons. The story was told at the end of season 1, and to tell more of it really detracts. And so when I say for 13 Reasons Why season 1 is one of my favorite seasons of all time, I have to have the caveat that I have to pretend that seasons 2, 3, and 4 don't exist. I have to ignore them, because if I acknowledge their existence, then they hurt season 1 and it's not really as good anymore. Honestly, like, if they wanted to do future seasons of 13 Reasons Why because it was such a huge success, I think there was a way they could have done it. That's by making an anthology show. If they made an anthology show where each season focused on a different high school, different characters, different situation, that could have worked. And they could have done new things without, and explored new issues without shitting on the characters they had developed. But by keeping the characters going once the stories have already been told, it just destroyed it. So absolutely, my number 1 shows that should have only had one season, 13 Reasons Why. So that's it for my top 10 shows that should have only had one season. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, as I cover many other shows on my channel, such as covering all things Star Trek, doing Star Trek Prodigy at the moment, also shows like The Expanse, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks so much for watching.